Hello everyone, my name is Manav Garg. I am doing BTech at IIT Roorkee in Data Science and Artificial Intelligence. Today I am going to present my CWS project, which is an expense splitter. I have written the code in C++ language, and I am going to show you what does the code do, which algorithms does it use, what input does it takes, and finally what output does it shows. Firstly, the foremost question comes, what does it do and which real world problem does it solve? Take it by an example when friends go out together, they often spend uneven amounts on food, travel, or activities. At the end, it might become confusing and may lead to calculation mistakes while calculating who pays whom and how much, because no one paid equal to their fair share. A simple automated solution is needed to split expenses fairly, which my code does. Before getting further, let me show you how does the code works. I will run the code, and first of all, it will ask enter the number of friends. Let us say 3. Name of person A, B, 1B A, expense 100, person 2 B, expense 200, person 3 C, and expense 300. This is the output. It shows expense report, total expenses 600, which is 100 plus 200 plus 300, and fair share of each person is 200, which is 600 by 3. Settlement, A should pay C 100. This is a simple calculation, and it can be clearly see that B is already settled up because he paid equal to his fair share. However, A paid less than 200 by an amount 100, and C paid greater than 200. That is, C paid 100 more. Therefore, A has to pay C 100, which is the output. So in my code, I have included 4 libraries: IOStream, Vector, IOManip, and String. IOStream includes the basic functions like cout, scene, etc. Vector, I have used Vector to store various type of inputs from the user and various type of data which are used in my calculations. IOManip, it just allows me to customize the output and how does it look to the user, and String to store names of person and other things. So first of all, the first part of the code is taking the input. To take the input, first is the number of people. It is stored in a variable called n. It can be clearly seen that I have defined a variable int n, and it shows cout enter the number of friends. Then store it in the variable n. Then I have defined 2 vectors which are used as to store input from the user. First of all is the vector of data type string of which is named names. It will store the name of the people. Second vector of data type double is expenses, as expense can also be in decimal of size n2. And then a vector double balance is n, which would be used further in my calculations. I have simultaneously also defined a vector total, double type variable total, which will store the total amount of expenses by the group. Then I will take the input from the user. I have run a loop from I equal to 0 till I equal to n, that is, it will run n times. And first of all, it will show enter the name of person I plus 1. Why I plus 1? Because the index of name I is the first element of a vector has index equal to 0. However, while taking the input, it can't be enter the name of person 0. It should be enter the name of person 1. Therefore, the person enters the name of person 1 and stores it in the vector names I. Then it shows enter expense of the name comes here, and then it is stored in the vector expenses I. Simultaneously update the variable total, which will store the total amount of expense by the group. Then I will calculate the share. Share is the basically total by n, that is how much each person should pay ideally. And then I will calculate balance I, which is equal to expense I minus share. What is it used for? So, we have clearly seen, divide total by n and share of each person is allowed. Then, if balance is less than 0, the person spent less than their fair share and therefore owes money and is a debtor. For example, in our example, if person A paid 100 rupees, however, the share was 200. So 100 minus 200 would be minus 100. Therefore, the person is a debtor and he has to pay 100 rupees more to someone. That someone we don't know right now and would be calculated further by using certain algorithm. Similarly, if balance is greater than 0, the person is a creditor as he has spent more than his required share. If balance is equal to 0, therefore the person has spent equal to the share and is already settled up. So again I have taken an example. Let us take a friend's trip of Alice, Bob, Charlie, Dave, 300, 100, 200, $400. Total expense would be 1000 by 4, which is $250. Alice, for example, spent $50 more than the fair share. Therefore, Alice is a creditor. Bob is a debtor with a debt of minus $150. Charlie, a debtor of $50. And Dave, again a creditor with a amount of $150. It can be clearly seen that list of debtors and list of creditors is also stored. In my code, I have also defined two types of vectors that are debtors and creditors, which will store the index of the person. I will explain it further. First of all, let us understand the settlement algorithm. I will separate people into debtors and creditors. Then I will match one debtor with one creditor at a time and calculate the transfer amount. Transfer amount would be the minimum of the money which debtor owes and creditor gets back. Because if debtor owes 50, however creditor gets back 100 in total, debtor won't pay 100. Debtor will only pay 50. That is the minimum of debt and credit. Then I have to update both the balances after the payment. If any one of the balance becomes 0, therefore the person is settled up and I have to move to the next person and continue until all balances are settled up. This is the code to execute the algorithm. First of all, I will just push back I, that is the index. For I equal to 0 till I equal to n. If balance is less than 0, therefore the person is a debtor and I have created a vector debtor and I don't know how many debtors are there. Therefore, I'm going to push back. If a person with index 0 is a debtor, the first element of debtor would be 0. And if the person with an index 1 is a creditor, the first element of creditor would be 1. Now take int I equal to 0 and j equal to 0. While I have taken a while loop over here because I don't know how many times the loop has to run. However, it can be calculated by taking the minimum of debtor size and creditor size. First of all, I equal to 0 and j equal to 0. So first of all, calculate the amount which is the transferable amount. Take a person from debtor and creditor, which is minimum balance debtors I. For example, I took like debtors first element was 0, therefore balance 0, and balance 0 corresponds to the person at index equal to 0. And I have taken a minus sign because the balance at 0th index at the debtors I index would be negative. So to make it positive, I have taken a minus sign. And similarly, balances creditors j. So don't confuse, like this is not equal to 0 and this is not equal to 0. This is the first element of debtors, which might be 0, 1, 2, anything. And it is stored in balances. Then Cout name of debtor should pay creditor the amount that is the minimum amount of these two. Why minimum? Because let us understand using this. Identify the debtor and creditor. Yes, we identified them. Like Bob owes 150 and Alice owed 50. So as we clearly see that Bob was in negative 150 and Alice was in plus 50. Therefore, Bob has to pay 150 to someone. We don't know who he is. And Alice has to get back 50 from someone. We don't know who he is. Then I have to calculate the transfer amount. So like Bob pays 150 and Alice gets back 50. Bob won't pay 150 all of it to Alice. Bob will only pay 50 to Alice if both of them are the first index of the debtors and creditors respectively. So minimum of 150 and 50 is 50. Therefore Bob pays Alice 50. Then I will make the payment and the output would be Bob should pay Alice 50. Then update the balances. Bob owes 150, right? Then Bob would be minus 100 owed and Alice would be settled up. So as Alice is settled up and she was a creditor, I will move to the next creditor. Clearly seen, if a person's balance reaches 0, they are settled. Move to the next creditor or debtor as needed. Alice is settled, move to Charlie, Bob still owes, stay on Bob. Then repeat until all balances are 0. Therefore, I used a while loop as I don't know that at what part the balance would become 0. So continue matching debtors and creditors and transfer money. I've also made a step-by-step flowchart which allows me to make you understand easily. First of all, are all balances equal to 0? Yes, then end. If no, then first of all pick a debtor and creditor. calculate the transfer amount, then debtor pays creditor, then update the creditor balance, then update debtor balance. Is debtor or creditor balance 0? If no, then repeat. If yes, then move to the next person. Finally, let us see how does the code works. So as int I equal to 0 and j equal to 0, which would be used while I is less than debtor size and j is less than creditor size. For example, if debtor size is 1, I is less than 1 and creditor size is less than 2, j would be less than 2. The first element of debtor which would be the index of the first debtor in balance, and similarly creditor j, which is the first element of creditor, which would be the first creditor in balance. It would be at 2, 3, we don't know. So out of these two, the minimum amount should be transferred, and it should simply say cout name of the debtor, because debtor is going to pay to the creditor the amount which is the minimum of this. Then after this, update all of this. Debtor has given an amount n, let us say amount. Therefore, debtor was already negative, like minus 150 in case of Bob, and gonna add 150 which it paid to Alice. Therefore now Bob owes minus 100, and creditor is going to be minus, because creditor like Alice was plus 50 and minus of 50 would lead to 0. Therefore Alice is settled up. Now Alice is settled up. Therefore balance of Alice, creditors j, corresponds to the index of Alice in the vector balance. Therefore if this is 0, then update j. Therefore if j is plus plus, now we have the second element of creditor. Second element of creditor is the second creditor in the balance vector. So debtor remains the same, however the creditor changes. How does it works then? Now we had the list of creditors. Dave owed 150, Alice owed 50. So now Bob has to pay 100. Now the minimum amount of these two, 100 and 150. Bob is going to pay Dave 100. Now Bob is settled up, because minus 100 plus 100 would lead to 0, and Dave would be 150 minus 100, that is 50. And finally we will move to the next debtor, and the creditor remains the same, and Charlie, who has to pay 50, would pay 50 to Dave, and the amount would be finally same. Therefore all the settlements work, and the code would work, and it will finally show all settlements done successfully. One of the important things which I forgot to show you was this. I have written cout fixed set precision 2. This line in the code indicates that if all the decimal numbers are printed, it would be printed up to second decimal place. For example, if 500 is printed, it would be 500.00. It just makes the output to be read easily and looks beautiful. Okay. I hope I am not missing anything, and I have covered all of these important parts. I hope I am able to explain you all of this clearly and satisfactorily. So, thank you. Have a nice day.